Relationship Revivalist Podcast. This is John, and I am here with my amazing, gorgeous, and beautiful wife, Jess.
Oh, John, thanks.
You're so very welcome, and you deserve it.
You're so sweet.
So what are we going to talk about today? I mean, we know what we're going to talk about, but so the topic that we're going to talk about is, do you want to spill the beans or should I?
I feel like you're asking me to. No, you did a great introduction, by the way.
Thanks.
I really appreciated that. We're talking about our relationships and how we want to have God-purposed relationships. And by that, we mean on-purpose relationships with God at the center. And we want to reminisce a little bit with you. And, think about your story, too, as we talk about our own. But think about, how did your relationship start out? If you're in one right now and that you're, maybe working on and working to make even better, think about how it started out. Think about what you really, really liked and loved about your significant other. And also look for the places where God led you to meet your significant other, because that's what we're really focusing on today, God-purposed relationship. And so we wanted to pose a question. Does God really have anything to do with you meeting your significant other? Did he really have a plan that you would meet so-and-so, your significant other, and put you two together? Now, there are different schools of thought on this. Some people would say, no, not really. And other people would say, yes, he definitely has a plan. So we wanted to delve in a little bit and talk about what we think, our opinions, and our relationship with it. So think about your own.
Absolutely. And so when we're talking about our relationship and how we met, and how do we see the little signposts that God leaves that says, hey, I'm right here in your everyday life, and I'm helping guide you to your partner for life. Mm-hmm. And, in our story, there were a few things that happened to me and also that happened to Jess that really told us, well, yeah, if we ever started having days where, we kind of doubt where we're going, and maybe we doubt that God really does have a plan for us, he left the signposts there for us to look at and say, well, God did this for me, and he's not a liar. He's not one to lead you astray. And so you can trust him because of that, and you can say, yeah, God left that signpost so that he knew one day I would start losing a bit of my faith that I had going strong all the way through. And then he's left that sign so you can say, yeah, this is definitely true. I am with the person that I'm supposed to be with. And so with me, when I was grieving about a year prior to meeting Jess. And so when it came time for me to really start learning, how to live life outside of my last wife, there was a lot of healing that I had to do, and I did it by meditating on God's word. I did it by praying and asking, what is it that you have for me? What is it? Where am I supposed to go, Lord, from here? Because right now where I was at, in my grief, it was painful. It was an emotional thing that just wasn't very desirable, obviously. And so if we're to be in a place where we can grow and get further down the path that God has already ordained for us, we need to know what God says. We need to know where he's leaving these signposts. And if we're not seeing these signposts, perhaps we're looking in the wrong areas. And that really comes right back down to, are we really meditating on his word? Are we really creating and having the relationship with God himself? Because he won't lead you astray. And, and then Jess, you said something about God not. He doesn't really.
Well, I think you have really been explaining creating a history with God and trusting in Him, and creating that history with Him very, very well. And I like how you mentioned signposts, because there are days where you might just really not even like your significant other very much. Maybe they're really just really kind of bothering you, and
Right.
and you just feel kind of or whatever. And so on those days, it is important to remember why you love them in the first place, what drew you to them in the first place, and also, like John was saying, those signposts that God puts up, just so we know we're on the right path, and just to remind us, hey, guys, I put you together. You're gonna work this out, right? So,
Right, and so when you see those signposts, you realize, well, hey, I'm going down this path, and when you've realized, well, God left those posts for me to realize that I need to be amping up my faith level. Guess what happens? It's without fail, almost even in my life, where I'll have this, and then the next thing I know, the same day or even the next day, there'll be another signpost, and it reminds you you're back on track. And if you do that and you see that, it helps you build a history with God. Just like you were talking about, Jess, where God wants to have that relationship with you, and that is the ultimate relationship that He wants you to learn how to have. And if you can have that relationship with God, it makes your relationship with your partner so much easier, especially if your partner's on the same page and being equally yoked. And, we have another episode that we talk about equally yoked. If you really want to know more about how to be equally yoked and the different ways to define that, go listen to that episode. And the episode we listen will be listed in the show notes. So I have to say that when we are telling you our story, I know that there was some signposts that Jess said, and I didn't quite get them to you yet, but here they come. So I was praying and asking God, who do you have for me that I can have as a partner? Because my last one, she's with you already. And so there was one time I was just praying, the next thing I know, I had this vision. And what I mean by vision, I mean this picture in my head, and it wasn't one of those, like, well, if you have a pre-notion of how men think, this is not one of those things. This is one of those things where I saw an outline of Jess. I saw, and I knew some things about her already, that she was already a Christian, that she was a level-headed and very stable person, and that's exactly what I needed in my life. God knows every little detail that we need, and He told me enough to let me know that, hey, I can trust you, and I did, and it wasn't but so. September was my 1 year of no. So she passed in October. I met Jess in September of the next year, and then we were married in February, because we know who God is. We know what He has for us, and it's been a joyous relationship since then, and we're coming up on 7 years. Mm-hmm. So Jess, what is it that God told you, or what do you take for His signpost that said, hey, John's the right one for you?
Well, I love telling this story, Sean. So you just opened a can of worms here. No, I opened a beautiful box here. So my story really starts like years and years ago, but I'll spare you all the time that took. But for a long time, I had worked on building my relationship with Jesus, and that building that trust in Him. And part of that I really had to build a trust in with God was, does He really have a man for me? I always thought I would get married. But I always thought I would get married much younger than I ended up getting married. And so there were some years there where I had, attained some things in my professional life and was kind of at a certain level, but wondering, okay, where's my guy? And I never want to move out ahead of him, ahead of God. And I certainly didn't want to lag behind either. So I, would ask the Lord, is there anything in me that I need to change or prepare? So you can bring him to me. And so, I had spent years of really preparing myself in a way, but I think I'm digressing a little too much maybe, but we'll move on. So John mentioned that we met in a September. And so I was talking with one of my good friends, and she had put herself online. And so online dating was, a bit new to me. I had never done that yet, but I was at a place in my life where it's like, well, you know what? I'm not really meeting any new guys in my circle that I was in, my job, my church, whatever. And so I was like, why not? But I didn't just rush right in. I took a moment and I asked the Holy Spirit what he said about that, what he thought about that. Is it okay if I do this? And you know what? I didn't hear anything. I didn't have a feeling, but I didn't hear a no. And I didn't have any feelings of dread or anything. Not that God would ever give you that. So I guess that you could say I did have a peace, and I didn't really hear anything. And so I felt like, okay, I think it's safe to proceed with caution. Mm-hmm. There's no harm in trying this. And so I did put myself online, and that was in August. And about a month later, John communicated with me through the particular website, and that's really how it started. But how did I know John was the one? Because, when you're looking through other profiles and things like that, there was something about him that just really stood out. And, with the profile, you can't always trust if that's really even who they say they are, things like that. But there was something about him that came through his profile. And so we did start communicating, and there was more and more for me realizing, like, this guy is really cool, and then a significant part of how I knew that he is the one for me is through prayer. I prayed a lot, and my mom prayed with me a lot too. Even after I met John, I prayed, and I really wanted to know, God, is he the one? And the Lord let me know that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's any major thou shalt marry John moment or anything like that. But, God often leads through peace. I don't remember the Bible verse right now, but in one translation it says, let peace be your umpire. I think John likes that for the sports reference.
Oh, yeah. Strike!
But if your umpire is saying safe or is giving you peace,
yeah,
it's pretty safe to say you're on the right path, right?
Right. You don't have to have a judgment called by an umpire yet. The game still has to be played.
Well, when you propose, we were definitely in the game, right?
Right. And you didn't get you're out. You didn't get a strike or a ball.
Right.
You're still up there batting.
Yeah.
And so, guys, there's your reference for sports for this week.
Thank you, John. That's good. Keep everyone interested. Okay. So that's kind of my story there, and I think I took way too long to answer.
No, that's fine. I mean, so the ultimate thing is we really need to start trusting what God's plan is for us. Mm-hmm. And if we're not trusting, it seems like when we try to handle things on our own, things tend to mess up a bit more, and I mean a lot more, really, when we are handling them, because God has the right plan for us. And if we follow his plan, everything is hunky-dory, amazing. And so there's a question that that may be proposed here, and this is kind of the other school of thought.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like just kind of we wanted to bring this up just so no one got the wrong idea. And I'll tell you what it is. So if you're one that believes that God definitely has a plan of who you should be with, right? We didn't want anyone to think, well, I'm already married, but what if I'm not married to the person who God had planned for me?
Yeah.
So we just wanted to clear the air there and not have anyone doubt who they're married to, right? Mm-hmm. Now, unless there's like some kind of abuse or something like that going on, that's a totally different,
Right.
a totally different thing. You need to keep yourself safe. Make sure that everybody is safe. But if you're just thinking, oh, I wonder if the grass is greener somewhere else, and maybe I married the wrong one or something like that.
Right. And just so I want to interject, if it looks like the grass is greener on the other side, it's almost never greener. It's probably closer to brown, and it's not been watered and not lush like you think it is. Because, guys, if you see that blonde or brunette that's across the way and you're out with your woman, and I mean that, so guys, if you are out with your partner and you see a blonde or brunette or a redhead girl who's just a really attractive, beautiful woman, and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I wonder what kind of a relationship I could have with her. First of all, you need to step back and you just say, hey, where are these thoughts coming from? Mm-hmm. And really analyze them. Make sure you know. I'll tell you right now, they're not from God himself, because he put you together with your partner that you're with right now. So you need to trust where God takes you. And if you're married now, that is the woman of your dreams. And whether you're happy or not at a certain time, it's not her that's making you unhappy. It's you that needs to change who you are so that you can be happy. Because let me tell you, when you're unhappy and you cut things off with your partner and you try to go to another place of relationship thinking that they're going to help you make you happy, you're mistaken and you're highly deceived. And God doesn't deceive. So we know where those thought processes come from, and you have to nip them in the bud right now and make that commitment. Be all in with your partner, and your wife. You have to be all the way in. You have to be the one that's going to say, yeah, I'm with you through the thick and thin. Remember your vows. Mm-hmm. If you got married, you had vows. So stay true to those vows, and know that even God says in Jeremiah 29:11, he says, I know the plans for you. I have plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you hope and a future. So take trust in that.
And I was reminded of our own wedding and our officiant who spoke a little bit during the ceremony, and I love what he said he was speaking to us at the time, but he would tell this to anyone that was getting married. When you marry someone, they are now the most handsome, the most beautiful person, the funniest, the greatest, basically the best. And so, like, in our minds now, we how dare we think of anyone else better than our partner? Does that make sense?
Totally does. And that's kind of what I was getting across too as well. The mindset that Satan comes along to try to steal, destroy, mm-hmm. and all that. We have to be more keen on what his wiles are. And the wiles that he plays, they've not changed over the ages. They're the same thing that they tried Adam and Eve with, Abraham, and all the people in the Bible. They're the same stuff. Because he knows one thing about us. We tend to think more about ourselves than the other person. And so start thinking about the other person, and you'll realize that your paths will straighten out automatically because you're helping someone else. You're not being selfish. So that's going to wrap up our episode for today, this week. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next week's episode, and we will talk to you soon.
See you later.